Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again today. In this video, we'll be taking apart the shock mounts in order to replace those donuts that reside inside, squeezed between the two metal plates. And we'll be replacing those donuts with the polyurethane ones provided by Steve Davis. Now, in order to do this, we have to take the rivets out. There are 3 rivets that hold these plates together. We need to remove the rivets first. So that's step number 1. You see that I have clamped the 2 pieces together so that when the rivets let go, the plates won't just suddenly separate, but I can do that in a more controlled manner with the clamps. I say controlled manner because those donuts that are inside here are squeezed and they're under pressure, so they're constantly trying to push out and separate the plates. Oh, you see my setup here. I'm not using a vise. If I have to, I'll move over to the vise, but I think this approach would work. I think we're through. Yep. The rivet is out nice and clean. There it is. There's the bottom part. Let's get some focus here. There we go. So if you just drill through the top, the rest of it would just fall out. All right, time to do that 2 more times, and then we'll continue. By the way, I didn't mention, but every time you're drilling through metal especially, wear your safety goggles just in case. This part of the process did seem quite safe, but nevertheless. All right, the rivets are out. Now, let me just clean up here a bit. All right, let's start loosening these clamps little by little and see what we get on the inside. Oops, did you hear that? Look at how this opened up. Boom. Right, so now I cannot reclamp this just using my fingers, which shows you that there is constant pressure from these inside donuts pushing out. Metal pieces are in great shape. Even this looks in great shape. I probably could have just kept the mounts, but anyways, with putting the new polyurethane components in, I should be trouble-free for decades to come. Because look, even this original part, it looks mint. Sure, there is a bit of darkening here, but the rest of it is perfectly fine. All right, we have the mounts apart. Now I will need this middle, oh boy, this middle metal plate. I will need it between the new donuts, so I'll have to take that out. Screwdriver to the rescue. Let's use this small one. Wow, they're so tight. I'll probably end up damaging the actual... you know what, let me think of another way to take this apart. I don't want to be shoving the screwdriver in here. Alright, so clearly the screwdriver didn't work. It couldn't really make much of a difference or penetrate through here. After that, you got one of these grips and I squeezed, and what I could see, let me try to zoom in here. Yeah, right there in the middle of the screen. It would not separate. The donut material would not separate from the metal. So this told me that this is actually glued together. This is not a mere fusing of the materials because of the pressure. There is actual glue between the metal and this foamy rubbery material. So at that point I went to a chisel, and with the chisel I tried... that's not how I was holding it when I was pressing the chisel forward, don't worry about it. But this is extremely sharp, and it could not do the job. Like I could not get this to work. After the chisel I got knives. So I got a couple of knives here. This is actually a fish knife. This is an extremely sharp knife. And with the knives I was able to cut carefully and as closely as I could along the metal and separate this piece. Yeah, I've seen some other videos online, and I think these, on other cars, these components just come apart. Not sure why they're glued here, but I have to say that it seems really well made, really solid, and I think there is probably at least another decade of life in this component, as long as I seal it on this side. Like if I was to leave this in the car, as long as I seal it on this side and protect this part that's exposed to the exterior from damage, the internals are actually perfect. All right, I have the two donuts cut off and separated now from the metal internal disc. Like I said, they were literally glued on. Now, at this point we can start the reassembly, essentially. In the last video we took out the top halves, those pieces that have the little ridge here, they're at the top, and they are the same regardless of which metal sort of casings you have. These are always the same. Well, the difference comes at the bottom. So if you're working with Euro mounts, you would use these two halves for the bottom, and if you're working with OEM or Welsh mounts, then you would be using these two for the bottom, and that's what I have opened here. So for the bottom, meaning you take this and you place it at the bottom. Now before we do that, let me just bring your attention to one thing here. Let me orient it. Take a look at this. Let me stop the light. Okay. Do you see how the distance from this outer circle to the inner circle over here is longer than the distance over here? This is narrower compared to this, and it's very apparent to the naked eye. I measured it, and I think it's very apparent in the video as well. This distance here is much narrower compared to this distance here. Essentially, this bottom piece when it was welded onto the top piece, they didn't center it. I mean, come on, Jag, really? There are 3 welding points and the 2 components were not centered relative to each other. I know that this has no bearing on the function of the whole assembly, but come on, details like this, it's kind of disappointing to see. Anyways, this is what we're working on with. These are the original metal castings. So we're taking our bottom half and we're placing it in here. Push it all the way down. It's a nice tight fit. Sits there perfectly. Okay. By the way, I don't know if it's clear from the camera, but it is at this point that you could clearly tell how the center of this piece and the center of the metal opening here are not fully aligned, but that's because of the welding problem, not because of this component. So the bottom is in. Now the disc needs to go in. Here there are 2 things you have to pay attention to. The first is, and arguably the more important one, this surface is flat. This surface is, what's the term here, concave, a little bit, looks like a cone narrowing inwards. You want the flat surface pointing up. So you would place it this way. The second thing you want to pay attention to is which way is the hole going to point, if you care about that. Arguably, it doesn't matter. I want to keep it the way it was originally. So for me, it has to point in the middle between 2 of these bolts. So I would kind of eye it and have it point sort of this way, rather than pointing towards a bolt. And that's because of the picture that I took earlier. Actually, I can throw it up on the screen now, which kind of shows me that this hole needs to be in between 2 bolts. So I would press this in now, and this is now already a tight fit. Look at this, like it's not falling off. This is solid, even at this point. It's not moving left or right, it's not shaking. This is a good, tight, precise fit. So this is in. Then we top it off with our top half, which goes in. There we go. Again, nothing is falling off. Like the measurements, the clearances are so precise. It is so good to see. I'm very happy with this product. Thank you, Steve, for such a good job done so far on this. And once this is in, we put the top plate on. Now, is it this way or is it this way? Well, the easiest way is either look at your pictures that you took earlier or just look at the markings. So right here you could see how there was a nut pressing down on this compared to this side, which is clean, right? So you kind of know, okay, it's this way. Or maybe this was actually the rivet rather than the nut. The rivet was here. The nuts are over here. But this was the rivet. This is where we drilled through. All right, so now we're in, and again, there is a gap, right? Just like with the previous original components, there's a gap here. All right, let's put the mount back together. Now, I need to compress so that I could rivet. Before I compress, I made sure that the holes where the rivets would go are wide enough. I had to use a 7/32 of an inch drill bit, 7/32, in order to widen them a little bit so that the rivets could fit nicely. That was step 1. Step 2, optional, I sprayed some PTFE spray on the bolts and on the nuts. This kind of spray is really good when you have metal on metal contact. So I just want to reduce the friction so that these nuts have no issue squeezing down onto the two metal plates. I'm also going to place washers in hopes that the nuts are not going to scratch up the surface here. I'm not sure if that would really help, but nice to have washers as you're squeezing down. All right, the plan now is to use a drill and go gradually in circle, little by little, and just keep squeezing down until we reach metal to metal contact here. All right, let's take a look. Yeah, this is nice and tight. You can see that the two metal pieces are touching. So this is as close as we're going to get. Let's make sure that our rivets fit. Okay, and now we can start placing the rivets in. Oh, unfortunately that broke higher up. The rivet is in. Just need to trim this. Let's go for the next one. Nice and clean. That's wonderful. Okay, last one. There it is. Perfect. All right. All three rivets are in. I have to trim this one up, but it is well seated, and this will be ready. All right, I cleaned this up. You can see a couple of tiny scratch marks here on the rivet itself, but overall I'm happy. It's nice and smooth. It doesn't protrude out. So this is ready to go back on the vehicle. Let's get these temporary nuts off. Very nice. I don't see any damage here, so the washers did help. That's very, very cool. Well, the mount is now rebuilt and it's ready to be put back into the full strut assembly, and then the assembly will go into the vehicle. So next video we're putting the strut assembly back together. New shock, existing spring, and this refurbished top. We'll put all of these back together. After that we're mounting it back in the vehicle. All right folks, I hope this was helpful. Best of luck in your upcoming projects, and I'll see you again in the next video. Take care.